Curtain Network.
Hey, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, one of the hosts of the Steelers Preview Podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Dave Schofield and Bryan Davis. What's up, Dave? How's it going?
Hey, I'm ready to go with some Steelers football just on the horizon.
Just on the horizon, indeed. Bryan Davis, what's up?
Yeah, I don't want to wish our summer away, but this is so glorious to see that training camp is so close.
It's actually a part of our summer. I mean, when you think about it, I mean, they report at the end of July, that's still summer. August is still summer. Most of September is still summer. So, I mean, I think that the Steelers going to camp is kind of like it is summer for me. It's part of summer. I'm excited for this. It's less than 2 weeks. And before we really get into anything that's directly related to, what's coming up with training camp, and we'll talk about all those topics here in a second, I do want to give these guys an opportunity to outline the excited thing that we are really pumped up for, and that's happening on Saturday with the Steel Curtain Network official website starting, and that is steelcurtainnetwork.com. Dave had a reminder on the Scobro Show. I'll let him give that reminder to you about if you watch us on Facebook, what is going to have to happen here on out. But also, Dave, go ahead and give your thoughts about this transition just in general.
Well, it's interesting because I've never written anything published other than at behindthesteelcurtain.com. So this is kind of new for me. This is almost exactly 5 years in. So sometimes change is sad, but also really exciting whenever you're moving on to other stuff. And to me, this is a little bit more of, we get to kind of do things the way we think is the best way to do it, and not have it, told you have to run this type of article and not this type of article, and things such as that nature. But when it comes to the podcast, we've been doing this on the podcast side since, my goodness, the name of the YouTube channel changed in February.
And it was early March.
Yeah. So that's ready to go. Now, it's really important because I said this on Scobro. If you are watching on Facebook live, or if you're watching live on Twitter, if you're doing it through the Behind the Steel Curtain Facebook page or Twitter account, you've got to go to SCN, because starting on Saturday, that's where the podcast will be. They won't be going up through the BTSC stuff anymore starting on Saturday. So go look for Steel Curtain Network on Facebook. Go to Steel C Network on Twitter, and you're right there. Won't miss a beat. For those of you on YouTube, it's no change on YouTube. We've been rolling there on YouTube, and we've had these up on those Twitter and Facebook accounts since March. It's just we've also been out on the other ones as well. So you might already be there and watching there. So just remember that's where you need to be.
Yeah, and for the value of, a lot of people, I know a lot of people are like, well, why would I follow Steel Curtain Network if I'm getting everything behind the Steel Curtain as well? Well, that's not going to happen anymore. So all of our written articles are going to be only on our Steel Curtain Network Twitter feed. They will automatically populate there. You'll be able to see all of them, direct links to those. Our writers will obviously be sharing their links and retweeting stuff like that. But ultimately, it's just one extra step. I know that's one too many for a lot of people, but still. Bryan, I want to get your thoughts on the whole transition and anything else you want to remind people about.
The one thing that we could always count on in life is that there's going to be change. And in our situation here, there's definitely change. And it hit us like a bag of nickels back in January when we first found out that we needed to start shopping for a new home. And when we started shopping for that new home, we found out that we were capable of so much more. And we decided to not take our ball and go home. We decided to take our ball and build a new stadium. And that's exactly what we did. And I'm really proud of my affiliation with these two gentlemen here, and what we have accomplished so far and what we're going to accomplish in the future. And when we were deciding exactly how we were going to do this, it was all with everybody that is listening to this and reading about us and in the live chat right now. It's all about you. It was to make sure not only were we finding a new home for us to go ahead and showcase our love for the Steelers, but it was a chance for you to all come along with us. And thank you so much for coming along with us. You know, the place that you go to, that you've gone to for so many years, that I've gone to for 8 years when I first met Jeff and got involved in this, well, it's going to look different. And there might be a new Jefferson, a new Stat Geek, a new Bad, but that's all fine. But with us, we're like the show MASH. You know, MASH was Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, and they would just have to pick up and go. It looked the same, though, when you watched the show, even though they were in a new location because they moved locations. The tents looked the same. The swamp looked the same. The mess hall looked the same. They had the same sets, but it was just set somewhere different. So with that being said, I'm going to assess this situation where only I can do, and it's one word: Baywatch. Baywatch? Why are you saying Baywatch, Bad? I am picturing, people running in the sand. That's not what I'm talking about. Dave, I like that. Look at Dave doing the slow motion run right now. If you're on audio, you're missing Dave. I'm just glad he's not in a Speedo doing it. Now, the reason I'm saying Baywatch, not a lot of people know this. When Baywatch first came out, it was on NBC for one season and it got canceled. Next thing you know, it's in syndication and it's on all these different local networks and all over the globe, and it became a sensation, an absolute sensation. So think about Baywatch. Not only your first home is going to be your forever home, sometimes it's your starter home. Now we are branching off into a much bigger home. We're really excited, and I'm going to say this. I'm sure Jeff and Dave will be fine with me speaking for them. Welcome to our new home.
I just can't not picture Pamela Anderson running on a beach right now. I mean,
well,
I know Brian's imagining Omar Khan in his little lifeguard
Can I say one more thing though? Sure. Brian said that you're lucky that I'm not wearing a Speedo. Remember, this doesn't show from the waist down on here, so you may never know.
The show caught fire. I think you meant Pamela Anderson caught fire, and that's what happened to the show.
Absolutely. But hey, don't sleep on the Hoff, though.
Oh, no, for sure. For sure. Okay, we're not getting into Baywatch. I do want to say something. Robert, I'm going to put this up on the screen. He said, remember to put your names to the article. So, Robert, here's what you have to do. The way that the site is set up, so if you go to steelcurtainnetwork.com, when we start populating new content there, I have some articles over there that were written for just the NFL so that people can kind of get their comments and get their self situated so they can comment on articles and give the thumbs up, thumbs down, all that stuff. You will go to steelcurtainnetwork.com and you will see a list of articles, and underneath there, you'll see the names of who wrote those. Now, when you click on the article, when you go into the article, you don't necessarily see that, but you do on the main page. It's the same with the NFL feed. You can see when Kevin Smith wrote an article, if I wrote an article, Dave wrote an article. It doesn't matter who writes the article, but you'll see that on the main page. So there you go. Make sure you check us out. All right, let's talk about some Steelers football. We are less than 2 weeks away. Now, we will be talking about training camp battles as we get closer, but I want to ask you, gentlemen, for this ramp-up period, is there any, I don't want to say a camp battle. I think, to me, a camp battle is between like 2 players, 1 roster spot, at least the way we view it. For me, I'm wondering, what position groups are you looking forward to seeing? Offense, defense, special teams, doesn't matter, during training camp for whatever reason. Dave, I'll let you go first.
All right. So now so it doesn't have to be.
Do you want me to go first? Do you want me to go first as an example?
I'll go ahead.
Okay. I think we got it.
I want to see how the roster fills out and who the Steelers are going to keep and everything on the defensive line. They've got so many players. And I mean, even look at the nose tackle position. They can't keep more than 2 nose tackles. They might have 3 or 4 right now. There's a bunch of players vying just to make the roster with the Steelers. How many will they keep? Which cream is going to rise to the top, and then who's going to go forward in that rotation this year?
Okay, Brian, what about you?
Well, I'm anxious to see a lot of things, but I really want to see what the wide receivers look like. That is a stable that a lot of people have been saying, well, it's, lower tier of the National Football League. And I remember just a couple of years ago, maybe 2020, we were talking about this being quite possibly one of the best wide receiver stables. And it just didn't work out to what we thought they were going to look like. So don't look now, but just when you think it's not going to be good, the Steelers find a way to make it good. Don't look now, but just because Deontay Johnson had 0 touchdowns last year doesn't mean that he isn't a major part of that stable. Don't look now, but everybody is talking about George Pickens and how he had a very disappointing rookie year with over 800 yards. And so, I'm hearing those things and I just get excited about guys like this. Don't look now, but Allen Robinson is the kind of player that if you just get half of 1,000 out of him and you get 5 touchdowns, but you're also getting the leadership out of him. And don't look now, you have basically one more rookie that you did not expect to be having because Calvin Austin III is a rookie and he could be exciting. So not only is he not a rookie, but we feel like he's a rookie. But when I talked to him, he said the great thing about me here in my situation, yes, I didn't get to play. Yes, you did not get to see me play, but I went to every single meeting. I went to all these workouts. I was around and I even traveled with the team at times. So I know the culture. I'm ready to go. So those are 4 guys right there. And not to mention the other players that I can't wait to see here. Man, you have guys coming in from the XFL. You have guys that we have already written off that were on the team last year. You have a guy like Cody White that a lot of people are excited about, who we've written off. So I want to see how the wide receiver stable shapes up the most.
I'll tell you one position group that I think a lot of people aren't really discussing too much, and it's just because it's just you just need to round out the room. You're not talking about starters, even backups. It's running back. For me, you have Najee Harris, you have Jalen Warren. There's no debate there. I don't think there's anyone on this planet that likes the Steelers that follows a team that would say, yes, there's a debate between the top 2 running backs. But who is running back 3? And this kind of bleeds into the special teams discussion. This is something I've talked about a lot on multiple podcasts, that you think about in regards to special teams, where's the value? Who has that value? Now, I had Jim Wexell on my Let's Ride podcast on Monday, and Jim thought that maybe the Steelers would only roll with 2 running backs, and they might try to stash an Anthony McFarland on the practice squad and let Connor Hayward carry the ball if they have to. I don't know if I'm buying into that per se, but at the same time, I look at this and say, well, if Anthony McFarland's only going to touch the ball on the offensive side of the ball, I don't know, maybe a maximum of 4 times in a game. What is he providing on special teams? Maybe not much. Therefore, what is his value on the team? What is his purpose on the roster? Then you go to like Calvin Austin III, someone Bryan just mentioned. Can he return kicks? Can he return punts? We hope so, because that could actually play a role in how many wide receivers are kept. Running backs, I think Dave and I are due for an update on our 53-man roster prediction. I'm actually kind of anxious to look at things again from a different lens. But I'm looking at running back 3 and seeing what do they do there. Benny Snell's still a free agent last I checked. But still, I'm not saying they bring him back. But how do they approach that? We'll see. Dave, do you have any comments about any of the like Bryan's or mine before we move on to the next round?
Well, about yours, you kind of you stole your own thunder. I was going to try to steal your thunder, but you pulled it out yourself. Where I was going to quote one Jim Wexell from your podcast on Monday, which was it was this Monday, right?
Correct.
Yeah, which was fantastic, by the way. If you did not catch that, make sure you go back and get Monday's Let's Ride with Jeff, where he interviewed Jim. And I thought that was a very intriguing idea. Now, to me, I feel that the Steelers are going to keep at least 4 running backs between the roster and the practice squad. That's what they're going to do. But could they try to go with 2 in the practice squad? Yeah, I don't know. I would say, if anything, what could be maybe a little bit more likely than what Jim was proposing is if they don't offer special teams value at that 3rd running back spot, they might be on the 53, but they might not get a helmet.
That's a good point.
That's another option that you could go with there and say, if there's an emergency where both running backs went down and you have to hand the ball off to Connor Hayward or, pass a lot or put him back there if you ever need to, maybe that's something that they would be ready to do. But that's a good question, because I really think that the point is, if you don't have someone that's that far down the depth chart that's not going to get the snaps on offense or contribute on special teams, they just can't get a helmet on game day.
Yeah. Bryan, anything to add about either Dave's or mine? Either one?
No, I feel completely safe with what you just said there. I agree wholeheartedly about it. When we're looking at all of this, especially the roster, who's going to get that helmet on game day, especially when, like you said, you're looking at the running backs, you're looking at that situation. There might be somebody out of the blue, but as long as you're very strong at the top, then you're in good shape.
Okay, before we go around again and save any other position, I want to kind of change the question or the topic a little bit, and this is based off of something that Sherry Richard just put in the live chat. Dave, you could steal this if you wanted. It referenced the preseason. It says, I need to see the inside linebacker room looking good in the preseason. We understand the preseason is not of any real significance for the majority of the roster. Excuse me. So you have all these players that their positions are safe, but then you have the fringe players. Is there a position group in general that, like in Sherry's case, the inside linebackers that you're like, I'm really looking forward to seeing this position group in the preseason? We've covered this team closely for long enough that you do know there is some value in the preseason for those players. Dave, is there any position that pops off? And it could be the one that was mentioned there in the comment. That's fine. That's your
low-hanging fruit.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah.
What about you? Is there anything in the preseason play that you're looking forward to?
That is the obvious one, because it is so unknown, because they redid the whole room outside of Mark Robinson, who they're still not thinking is going to be a major primary contributor this season.
Yeah.
So that is one that you want to see. Now, they've already seen some. We just haven't seen it as much. So that's why we as fans want to see that in the preseason at inside linebacker. There's a bunch of stuff that you want to see. And remember, preseason games are not for victories. They are to go out there and see what you have and what you can do with certain things. So I would love to see the inside linebackers get lots and lots of work. But at the same time, if they're doing so well that they're constantly forcing punts after 3 plays, then it is what it is.
That's true. Bryan, what about you in terms of preseason play? Is there any position group or player individually that you're looking to see?
There absolutely is a position group, but I'd like to address something Dave just said, and I agree with him wholeheartedly about that it's not about wins, but there is a very big but here. And when you saw what Kenny Pickett and Jaylen Warren and down the stretch in that Seattle game, that first preseason game, and how they were able to pull out that game, and also the touchdown to a receiver that I forget his name every year.
Tyler Vaughns.
There it is.
Tyler Vaughns. I always forget his name, and I hate that I do that. But when you see how they won that game, you had to feel good that this Steeler team could run a 2-minute drill, and especially with Kenny Pickett, your future there. So that was one of the most, actually, for me, one of the most important preseason wins of all time, just to see that you had hope. And when we watch these games, we're looking for hope, especially from those rookies. So where I'm looking at here are corners, because you have questions at corner all the way around. Is Patrick Peterson past his prime? That's a question that we want to see a little bit of it in preseason. Are the 2 rookies, are they viable? Are they the future that we believe that they're going to be? Should Joey Porter have been a number 1 draft pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers instead of Broderick Jones? We're glad that this happened. And hey, look, don't go in on that and say, oh, he definitely should. I'm just saying, he thought he should have been a number 1 pick. Now he has a chip on his shoulder. That's a good thing. But will he play like a number 1 pick in that number 32 spot? Now, same thing with a guy like Corey Trice. He thought he should have been a number 4 pick, a number 3 pick. He went 7. Is he undervalued in the draft? Is he the real future, or are these two guys just darlings to us? You know, we see that shiny new toy when they're drafted and we get all excited and we write about how they're the future, but it doesn't mean anything until they get into pads and real pants. Not shorts, real pants. And those games do count for these guys to see how it's going to shape up. One more guy I want to mention here is Levi Wallace a forgotten man? I don't think he is. So I really like how this is going to shape up, and we're going to see a lot from this cornerback position, and it's going to foreshadow a lot of things for us when they go ahead and suit up in those preseason games. So that's what I'm excited to see.
Let me ask you all a question, and this is intriguing to me, and I always think about things that really maybe don't matter until they do. How do you think Mike Tomlin will play the quarterbacks in this 3-game preseason with Kenny Pickett going into year 2? Dave, what are your thoughts?
That is a fantastic question. I think we'll get a little bit more of an idea of that as the time gets closer. But I mean, there's no reason to not to question who's going to start the game in the preseason outside of them saying we're going to sit Kenny Pickett. So unless they say they're going to set him, he's going to start every game. The only question is how long is he going to play? I think he's not obviously not getting the Ben Roethlisberger treatment. Sorry, I don't know if you guys heard that. We got a huge thunderstorm rolling through here, and I just had a massive rumble here. So if I cut out, it's because I lose power. So he's not going to do that where he's only going to play one game. He's going to play in every game. Kenny Pickett, in my opinion. I mean, they could say, hey, we've seen all we have, we're going to rest him. But I still think that third preseason game is still treated like the third preseason game when they had 4. I don't think that that's where they rest everyone, because that's what they did last year. They played their starters the longest. I mean, at the same time, you had TJ Watt getting knocked down against Detroit, which you don't want to see. But I don't think they're going to go on and play him unusually long or unusually short. I would say the best bet is look at what Mitch Trubisky did last year, and Kenny Pickett's probably going to get the same thing. And that's probably the best bet, I would say.
All right, Brian, what about you? What do you think about quarterback play in the preseason?
With Kenny Pickett, all you're looking for right now out of him is some continuity and being on the same page with his starting receivers, and maybe a guy like Hakeem Butler, maybe a guy like Calvin Austin III, just to have them hook up and be able to do that in real game situations. That might help, but that's really all you need out of Kenny Pickett. So with Kenny, less is more, but Dave's right, he's got to be in there. Because you don't. I hated the Ben Roethlisberger treatment towards the last 5 or 6 years, because there was a lot of rust to be shaken off with Ben in those first couple of games. And I never liked that, but there's always that risk. If you play Kenny too much, you're risking him getting hurt, like Dave said with TJ Watt last year. So you look at all those things. As far as the other quarterbacks go, I want to see your fourth guy get some action to see if he could possibly be a guy on the practice squad that eventually takes over for a Mason Rudolph or a Mitch Trubisky, because we all know that those guys, they're back for this year, but they're probably back for 1 year. At least one of them is definitely back for 1 year, and that's it. So you also want to see what else is out there, but those guys need their reps too. Doesn't matter who number 2 and number 3 is. Not really. What will matter is that they are capable and ready to come in at any time. So with all of these quarterbacks, the first 3 at least, these are the guys that just need to get work, but they don't really need to show anything like in past years. Show enough of anything in past years.
I think that what Dave said in regards to if you take Trubisky last year and flip it with Kenny Pickett, that's probably what you're going to get. I want to say that it was like, what's up, Dave?
No, I was just going to say, to also add on to that, I think you're right. I don't know that I want to see Kenny Pickett out there playing without the first team offensive line.
Yeah, because it's not a competition. It's not a competition. You know who your starter is.
Keep him as upright as possible.
Yeah.
So don't mess around and have him out there with anything other than the quote unquote starters. Cause I know sometimes you might rest somebody and have them not playing a game if they're dinged up or something, but keep him out there with the number one offensive line group, I think is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that this is something that I said it on a podcast probably last week. I felt like I did 100, and this was
only
from
98.
This was from our Minnesota Vikings coverage. David Stefano. He said that the new coach there, it's O'Connell or something like that. I don't know.
Kevin O'Connell, I think.
Kevin O'Connell. Yeah, he's an offensive-minded coach. What he did, and he said that it was a really controversial before they did it, but everyone loved it afterwards. Was the Vikings have a joint practice or two with another NFL team. That's when their starters get the most work. Why? It's a more controlled environment. You can run specific plays against specific packages. The defenders know, don't touch the quarterbacks. And then in the preseason, they used it only for the players that were needing the work in the stadium. He said that everyone criticized it at first, but they afterwards are like, this is actually really smart. And so the Steelers don't do joint practices. They haven't in a long time. I remember they did one against Buffalo, had one against Detroit at one time. Haven't done those in a long time, but that was kind of outside the box thinking, in my opinion, as it pertains to how do you handle your starters. It wasn't that Kirk Cousins didn't play in the preseason. It was very, very little because all his work came in these joint practices. So an interesting take there from someone else in the NFL and how they handle situations. So I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. On the audio side, you're going to hear a word or two from our sponsors. If you're watching live on YouTube, Facebook, or on Twitter, stay tuned. We'll be right back after really nothing. All right, Steelers fans, we're back, and we're in the second half of the show, the Steelers preview. We are getting you ramped up for training camp. And with the second half of these shows in the summer when there's not a lot of news, I do have a question before we get to trivia. And I'm going to throw it to Dave first, not only because that's the order I've been going all show, but also because he's the numbers guy. He's the stats guy. Dave, what the heck is holding up this Joey Porter Jr. Rookie contract? You wrote the article, I remember, saying it's not a big deal. But what do you think's holding it up? That's what I'm curious about.
My question is this, because I've been so busy with everything with Steel Curd Network, with getting ready to do that. Has Will Levis signed?
That I don't know.
I don't think he has.
I can try to look it up quick.
That's pick number 33. And my thing is there's no reason for Joey Porter to say, hey, if the number 33 pick is a quarterback, if they treated him like this, I'm drafted in a spot where typically would have been the first round, but it's not. So why should I take less than the quarterback? Have any less considerations? It's not really about the money, especially right off the bat. Most of that's outlined, but it's just how much of it's guaranteed, this, that, other thing. And if he's not missing any time right now and Levis still hasn't signed, there's really no incentive at this point to say, oh yeah, let's go ahead and hurry up, unless the Steelers give him everything that he asked.
According to Sports Illustrated, as of June 29th, so that's a little dated in terms of NFL news, he was the only Titans draft pick that remains unsigned. Mm-hmm. So I haven't seen anything more recent than that. But still, as of that, it has not. Some people in the live chat are saying that he has not been signed either. Brian, do you think Joey Porter Sr. has anything to do with this?
I actually don't. I think this is just really to see. I like the Levis thing. I like exactly what you said there. I like the fact that I don't think this is that big of a deal, but I think it's just posturing. But at the end of the day, they're just going to come in and do what they need to do.
Yeah, I just don't know if his agent's saying, hey, it was a 32nd pick. And the Steelers like, yeah, that was in the second round. But it was a 32nd pick. But that was in the second. I mean, you can't change the numbers. But you talk about guarantees. You talk about signing bonuses. Those are things that can fluctuate. Keanu Benton gets that partially guaranteed third year or something like that. It's definitely brings in these different intangible, I guess they are tangible, but these different factors, I should say, as it pertains to these rookie negotiations. It's just really weird that it's a second round draft pick, your second pick when the first round pick and every other pick is signed. that he remains unsigned. So we'll see. We'll see exactly how that plays out. Bryan, do you have trivia today?
Yes, I do. I have a really interesting one today.
All right, let's do it.
And so we always talk about the greatest draft in Pittsburgh Steelers history being 1974. And one of those men that was not drafted but came out of that 1974 rookie class was Donnie Shell. And I'm not talking about Donnie Shell in this trivia question whatsoever. But I am going to ask this question. What player had the most career interceptions for the, not for the Steelers, but career interceptions all time in their career in that 1974 draft?
Was Blunt wasn't in that draft class.
That was 1970.
No, who was the other?
Or
Most
71.
interceptions, you said, just for any team, but was drafted by the Steelers. Though,
Drafted
right?
by the Steelers in that epic draft.
Crap, I can't think of his name in the 74 draft.
Who had the most interceptions?
Was that would it have been Jimmy Allen? He's the guy between Stallworth and Webster.
It would be Jimmy Allen.
Okay.
And here's an interesting thing about Jimmy Allen. He had 31 career interceptions, 24 for Detroit, 7 for the Steelers. He was a very good player as a defensive back. And the guy that stayed with the Steelers the entire time, Jack Lambert, had 24 career interceptions. So I was trying to throw a little bit of a swerve because a lot of people would have thought Donnie Shell, but he wasn't drafted, and it was Jimmy Allen. And I'd like you to go ahead and look up Jimmy Allen if you do get a chance, because we always talk about how 4 out of those first 5 players went to the Hall of Fame. Jimmy Allen had a very good NFL career. It just wasn't all in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Very good.
I mean, and relative to those drafted around him by the same team is the other thing that you think of it. But we've talked about him enough and mentioned him enough because he's that other guy is why I remember his name.
Yes. And we're seeing in the live chat how many interceptions Donnie Shell had. Yes. I mean, he had a lot. He did have 51, but he was not drafted, but he was in that rookie class.
The funny thing is, all those interceptions by Donnie Shell, when I think of him, I only think of one play, and that is him breaking the ribs of Houston Oiler running back. Oh my gosh, what's his name?
Number 34, Earl the Pearl
Campbell. Yeah, Earl Campbell. It was a hard hit, but Earl got spun around before Shell hit him, so it wasn't as if he was expecting the hit. But that's what I think of. I don't think of interceptions by Donnie Shell. That's what I think of as that hit. But I've seen it a lot.
One thing about Donnie Shell, it's funny. There are certain players, when Tony Defio and I would do the Steelers retro show, there are certain players that always had big plays in those big games. Donnie Shell was definitely one of them. Jim Smith was actually another one, the wide receiver. You always think of those other wide receivers, but there were certain guys that in big games, they always showed up. Donnie Shell was that guy.
There you go. All right, Dave, do you have trivia?
Yes, I do, but I'm going to follow up with some with Bryan. What was Jimmy Allen's nickname?
Jimmy Allen's nickname, Spider-Man.
That's correct. Nickname Spider-Man.
Now, not only that, I'm going to what he did this for the Detroit Lions, and he was the lead singer for, they decided to do their own song. They took their own pop song and did their own version of it. And he was the lead singer for the Lions in a song that they adopted in 1980 as their theme song. They were actually a pretty decent team. They were a playoff team in 1980, I believe. What song was that, Jeff?
I know what it is, so I'm going to let
I know you know what it is.
In 1980?
Yes. And if you would have read The More You Know the other day, you'd know this.
I can't say I remember that part of it. No, I have no clue.
I actually put the YouTube video of Jimmy Allen and the Detroit Lions singing Another One Bites the Dust. Come on. Steve walks down the street, chica in his hand. All right.
Now, how did Jimmy Allen end up with the Detroit Lions?
He was traded.
Yes. I can't figure out who all was in the trade.
There were some bizarre trades in the
Yeah,
late
he was
70s.
he was traded that offseason. Ernie
Frank
Holmes was
Lewis.
traded. Glenn Edwards was traded, because I'm trying to find information on it. Jim Clack was traded.
Frank Lewis was one of those guys
Mhm.
that became he was traded for a player that failed his physical, and they sent him back to Buffalo, and they ended up getting nothing for Frank Lewis, who went on to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, Allen, it was contract issues.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah, he said he did a play me or trade me ultimatum.
you do not do that to Chuck Noll.
Yeah, and he was traded. Let's see, a bunch of those guys were traded for a 4th round draft pick. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. All right, that's enough of the Jimmy Allen talk. Also, Jeff, I was able to find that according to Spot Rack, that Will Levis is not signed.
No, good.
So, but neither has Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson.
They haven't signed either?
According to Spot Rack, they have not.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but remember, the money in these contracts really isn't up for debate. It's locked. It's locked in. It's just
but signing bonuses and language, like guaranteed money, is up
yes,
for debate.
absolutely. So, yep. So, all right, I have a trivia here because Jeff, you should know what this is going to be. You probably already heard the question. Because I talked about it a little bit on Stat Geek. I said, well, I could do Jeff a favor and let him know what the question is here so he could look it up. I'm like, he's not going to take the time to look it up. But I was doing various things for the show. If you listened to it this morning, I was supposed to try to find, is there a statistical tipping point whenever the team, if they do this, then it's very likely they're going to have a victory. So I did some stuff. There were some that were pretty definite, but it's a number, but at the same time, you could say, oh, well, if you rush the ball so many times or for so many yards, that doesn't mean that when you're down by a bunch, if you just start rushing it a bunch to hit that number, that you're going to win. It's all about in how you play the game. But one of the things that I found interesting is I did this over the last 5 years, and the Steelers did not have a game where they surrendered 30 points or more, where they won the game, where they surrendered that many points and yet won the game. They obviously surrendered over 30 points and lost the game, but they didn't have any games in the last 5 years where they surrendered 30 points or more and won the game. So I decided to look back and say, all right, let's find some games. See, to me, those are what you would call a shootout. Both teams going over 30 points. That's really a shootout game. How many games have the Steelers won in their franchise history while giving up more than 30 points or more?
So franchise history, not merger.
Franchise history.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, this is just a shot in the dark. It's not like, but there'll be other questions along the way that
I'm sure there are.
Remember.
I'm going to say it's on the low end. I'll say that they won. I'm going to go with 25 games. I'm sure that's way off.
I am going to go 19, and I could actually name 2 of them right off the top of my head.
Well, you can come pull the $100 out of my pocket, Bryan Anthony Davis, because that's exactly right.
You are kidding me.
No,
19,
it is 19
he got it right.
Games. He got it spot on. 19 games overall. Now, 2 of them were before the merger. The first one was in 1962 when the Steelers beat the Minnesota Vikings 39-31. Then they had a game in 1966 where they won in Atlanta 57-33. Those are not normally the kind. I mean, my goodness, you give up over 30 points, but you win by more than 3 scores. Yikes, that's crazy. Then there wasn't any until later in the 70s. Bryan, would you have some games that you would like to name that you can say for sure that the Steelers won while still giving up more than 30 or more points?
2009.
2009.
Steelers versus Packers.
Yes. Do you remember the score of that game?
Was it 39-35 or No, I do not.
2009, it was 37-36.
Okay, there you go. And here's one that I was at.
Mhm.
And I believe it was, I'm going to say 2014, but it was the first of 2 weeks in a row where Ben Roethlisberger had 6 touchdown passes. It was against the Colts. They won, my gosh, was it 51-34?
That is the exact score. That is correct.
Okay. I will give you another one that pops in my head. I'm going to go with 39-38. It was the week after Ryan Shazier went down. So I'm going to say it was December 10th of 2017. And I think 39-38 over the Ravens.
That is correct, because that actually answers what would have been my next question. What's the most points the Steelers have ever surrendered in franchise history and still won the game? That is the answer, because that is also the last time the Steelers gave up more than 30 points and won the game, was in that one.
Let me give you one more. Jeff? Can I give you one more?
Well, hold on, just say yes. I want to give you but I would ask Jeff if you have any memories of that game.
Which game?
The 39-38 win over the Ravens the week after Shazier got hurt.
Oh man, that
2017.
That time frame was a blur.
TJ, I know, came up big.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember much about that game.
Yeah, the Steelers were were up 14-0 early in the second quarter, but they were down. Let's see, they cut the lead. They were down. What was that? 9 points when they scored a touchdown with 3.5 minutes left. And then they were also able to kick a field goal at the end.
They had a running back. The Ravens had a running back that went off in that game. They got him from Seattle, I think, and I can't remember his name.
Javorius Allen.
Buck Allen? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And Alex Collins also had.
That's who I was actually. That's who I was thinking of.
Because Allen had 2 touchdowns. Collins had 1. Then you're dealing with. Let me look at the yardage that they had rushing. Oh yeah, Collins is the one that had 120 yards. Allen only had 25. But yeah, he had 120 yards on 18 carries, and a touchdown. But for the Steelers, it was Ben Roethlisberger throwing for 506 yards. And I mean, the Steelers, they barely rushed the ball because they were down so much. Le'Veon Bell only had 48 rushing yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. Roosevelt Nix caught a touchdown in that game.
It was, I think he got a 2-point conversion too.
Let's see. Somebody
got a 2-point.
No, when he went for that, when they scored on that, they went for a 2-point conversion and failed.
Okay.
They did not get the conversion because that's made it 31-29, and then that's how they had to do other things. So just wondering if Jeff had much memory of that game. You said you have another one that they scored over 30 points and won, or gave up 30 points.
I'm going to go 1979. I'm going to go with, it was against the Browns in Cleveland. It was right around Halloween because Lynn Swann was wearing a Pirates hat and a Pirates jacket on the sideline, because it was during the World Series. I'm going to say 51-35.
It was 51-35. It was a little bit earlier in October. It was October 7th.
Okay.
But that happened twice that year against the Browns, because against the Browns at home that same year in November, I'm pretty sure that would be right before Thanksgiving because it was the 25th. They beat them 33-30 in overtime at home.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's true. And that was at home. Yeah. I mean, they had some battles with the Browns.
Yeah. They also did, once again with the Browns in 1977 at home, they won 35-31. But there's another 35-31 score that's in there that I'm surprised you didn't remember, Brian.
It was actually happened in 1979, but not the 1979 season. Jeff, I'll let you go ahead and take this one. I think
I'm not even paying attention.
No clue. Just tell me when it's time for me to talk again. Go ahead.
It was Super Bowl 13, Jeff.
Yeah, when they beat the Cowboys.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I was checking Twitter and stuff.
Seattle has 2 losses.
Then Jeff, I feel bad for you. You need to go back and listen to the brilliance that Dave and I just spouted out.
Yeah. So there was other games that they had in there where they gave up. There was a game in Houston in 1988. They won 37-34. They won in Chicago. Then there was a break again until 95. Not back-to-back weeks, 2 weeks apart in 95. In Chicago, 37-34 in overtime.
And I know the other one, Cincinnati.
Cincinnati was the 49-31.
We have retro shows on both of those.
Yep. In 97, there was the 42-34 in Baltimore. Then there was another one at home against Baltimore in 2002. Man, Cleveland's on here a lot. Cleveland is on here a lot. But if you look at those opponents, you've got Cleveland on here 4 times.
Oh, the wild card game in the snow.
Well, I don't. Did I? I don't even know that I had the wild card game. This might have just been regular season when I looked at it.
Okay.
No, this was with the postseason. I thought I did it with both, but I don't remember seeing any postseason games.
Jeff loves that game.
Yeah,
Jeff's a big fan of that Fuamatu Malafala in the snow.
Yeah,
Kelly Holcomb. Holcomb was the quarterback for the Browns. Dennis Northcutt, if he catches that pass in the fourth quarter, it's over.
I think that was 33-30, something like that.
2002. It was the first season of Heinz Field. So it's technically in 2002, I believe.
No, it was 2002 season. So it was actually
2003
because that was Tommy Maddox.
Yes.
And who was that against? You said
it was Cleveland.
That was a 36-33.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I messed it up because they called it game 1, but week 18 because it was in the playoffs. So it was game 1 of the playoffs. So yeah, and the only other thing I was going to say, there's one NFC team that they've done that they did twice where they gave up 30 points and still won. We already mentioned one of them, but we've done this long enough. The other one, it happened twice against Green Bay in 2009 and 2013. Where they won 38-31 in Green Bay. But when you look at these, when the Steelers give up 30 points, they don't. I mean, that's only 19 wins in franchise history. They are not a quote-unquote shootout team for the most part. But maybe that can change going forward.
Yeah.
Jeff's like, don't go.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I didn't mean to hijack the show. I just got excited.
Oh, no, it's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Because you know what?
Cup of tea.
Most of these games, we did retro shows on.
Yeah.
that's why Brian's.
Even the Houston one in 1988, we did one on that one.
Well, because they're wins and they're exciting because there's lots of scoring. That's what, Jeff still hasn't woke up from the Super Bowl. What was it between the Rams and the Patriots? That was 13-9.
Oh, that was horrible.
That was bad.
It was good football, but not what people wanted to see.
There can be a happy median between a low scoring game and then a shootout. There can be wow, that had everything. It had defense, it had offense. Like that does exist.
We saw it on Christmas Eve last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a 13-10 game.
Yeah.
And yet that was exciting.
It was pretty slow moving at times.
Yeah. Well, part of the reason it was exciting is because you're also it was cold and the excitement of the next day and trying to get stuff done while watching the football game. And yeah.
All right. This is good. Let's just do some final thoughts and wrap this up. We'll let Brian go first. Brian, go ahead and do your final thoughts.
All right. Once again, we're talking about moving. I remember in 1993 in Johnstown, PA, when Hill's department store moved to where the old mall was. They had even bigger location, and everyone was like, Hill's is moving. But hey, at least the greatest snack bar ever, which was Hill's department store, is still going to remain. So they promised, hey, it's going to be the same Hill's that you know and love. Well, you know what? We are moving. You're going to find us on a different website. It's going to be Fans First Sports Network. It's going to be the Steel Curtain Network. We are moving. But I'm not going to promise that we're going to be the same because we expect to be even better. we expect to give you even more than what you have experienced before, and it's going to be exciting. Change is good if you do it right. Change is better if you try to reach for the stars. So here at Steel Curtain Network, I'm going to speak for all of us. We're going to keep our feet on the ground, but we're going to keep reaching for those hypocycloids.
Cringe.
Hey, that's Kevin Smith's line now that he says every week.
Yeah.
Come on, you gotta.
I think you have a gun to his head when he says that. All right, Dave, your final thoughts. Go ahead.
Well, my final thoughts is I also want people to understand this transition's already happened on the podcast side. For those of you that are here live with us, unless it's through the BTSC Facebook account, you got to go to the other one or the SCN account. Nothing's really going to change here. You're not going to see it. But for those of you that also follow with the written word, that's where you're going to see everything. New location, new look. Going to probably have some growing pains, but come grow with us.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I thank you both for the time this evening. Thank everyone that's watching live in the live chat, wherever you're watching. And we will be back next week for another episode of the Steelers Preview. Dave, why don't you send us out like you always do?
Hey.
See you next week. Take it easy, everyone.
Curtain Network. Get it.
Everybody else gets a little tight.